Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome back or welcome to what is either the first or the second edition. We're sort of starting to figure out the nomenclature of Flames Nation's new Calgary Flames prospects show, The Back Burner. You may be familiar with the barn burner and the afterburner. Well, we've got a different sort of burner on the burner today, and it is the back burner. And my name is Mike Gould, and I'm here with Ryan Pike. You might have seen us at the NHL Draft Lottery, where we were joined by Kent Wilson and had a bit of a nervous breakdown and then a little bit of a come down effect after the Calgary Flames did not win the NHL Draft Lottery. But Ryan, today we're not going to really be talking about the 2025 NHL Draft. We're going to be talking about a few different things. But first of all, before we get into it, how you doing? The people want to know.
I'm doing all right.
He's a man of few words. He is more eloquent than you might think. Ryan Pike and Mike Gould here, and we're brought to you by Platinum Mitsubishi. That's the title sponsor of the Flames Nation Back Burner Show. Visit them up at 2720 Barlow Trail Northeast, and you can get your hands on a new 2025 Outlander with Yamaha audio, brown leather seats, ventilated seats, and of course the best-in-class 10-year, 160,000-kilometer powertrain warranty. And unlike the Draft Lottery show, Ryan, I did not wait 35 minutes into the show to plug Platinum Mitsubishi. So we're off to a better start already here on edition 2 of the Back Burner Show. And we got lots to go over. As we sort of mentioned, we're not going to be sort of delving deep into the 2025 draft. There will be lots of opportunities to do so between now and, remind me, Pike, what day is the draft starting? It's June
27th.
June 27th. Boy, they really need to work on that. It's so compressed up against free agency. Just 4 days later.
They're never going to work on that.
It's awful. But we will have lots of opportunities to discuss who the Flames will pick at picks 18 or 29 to 32, wherever the Florida pick ends up, or if they do make some moves to change things around. But we do want to talk today about some Calgary Flames prospects. And Pike, the Memorial Cup is about to begin. It
starts Friday.
Yeah, exactly.
We were worried that we would not have enough Calgary Flames hockey to discuss. And between the many performances at the IIHF Men's World Championship and the Memorial Cup, we're going to be talking about Flames hockey probably to like, if certain people make the Mem Cup final, we might be talking about Flames players playing into June, which is an odd thing to conceptualize.
Well, and yeah, I mean, it's an interesting opportunity to see, because last year, of course, a Calgary Flames prospect did win the Memorial Cup, but he wasn't really a prospect of the Flames yet. This time, we get to sort of see it happen in real time, because the Flames have not just one, but 2 prospects vying for a chance to win the Mem Cup this year, Pike, and they're both playing on some pretty good teams.
Yeah, so a year ago, an obscure player named Zane Breck managed to drag his team, the host team, the Saginaw Spirit, into the Memorial Cup. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike. I believe the Spirit lost in, I think, the second or third round of the OHL playoffs. They didn't do terribly, but they didn't do great. They did not win their way into the Memorial Cup. They were the hosts, so they were in no matter what. And so Saginaw had, they were the hosts and they won. There's plenty of teams that host the tournament and get pumped because you might not be as battle tested as the teams you're playing against. This year, both Andrew Basha and the Medicine Hat Tigers and the Quebec League champions, the
Moncton Wildcats.
The Moncton Wildcats. I was spacing on. I was trying to think of a French name, and I'm like, nope, Moncton's not French. Etienne Moran and the Wildcats won their way in. Coincidentally enough, the team that the Wildcats beat in 6 games was the hosts, the Rimouski Oceanic. So the Rimouski they won their bid to host, and then they almost won their way in anyway. So that's pretty impressive. So it's, typically it's the host is the weaker sister, so to speak, of the 4 teams in the tournament, but Rimouski is probably not going to be that much weaker than the 3 teams they're facing. So it's one of my favorite tournaments of the year, because it's the super championship. It's for those of you who are unfamiliar, you have one host team, and then the 3 other CHL leagues each have their playoffs, and then the winners of those playoffs play. So this is essentially the 5th round of the Canadian Major Junior playoffs, with a bunch of teams that had to win their way in or are the host and almost won their way in. So you're going to see a lot of teams that are battle tested and have played a crap ton of hockey, and a The nice thing is we just saw some kind of borderline nasty games between Moncton and Rimouski. They would not play each other to the last game of the round robin, and I think they're very glad to not see each other for a bit because they were getting kind of sick of each other by the end of that series.
Well, a couple of points of order for you, Pike. So last year, actually, the Spirit got out in the first round. They were knocked out pretty early. Zane Parek's team. Parek had 9 points in 5 playoff games last year, but it wasn't enough. But then they came back in the Memorial Cup, and it's kind of funny. Moncton, as you say, made it all the way to the Q final against. Now I'm blanking against Rimouski. That's right. And they made it all the way. And so it kind of put them in a funny position where they didn't necessarily have to win that series to make it to the Memorial Cup, of course. Both teams, of course, had that, but Rimouski was already locked in before the playoffs even started. But it kind of harkens back for me to, and this off the top of my head, but the last time that a Flames prospect actually affiliated with the Flames won the Memorial Cup, and that was in 2022. When the St. John Sea Dogs won.
There was two of them.
There were 2 of them. It was Yan Kuznetsov and Jeremy Poirier.
And you know who the coach was that year?
Gardner McDougall.
Moncton's current head coach. He's been a U18 World U18 head coach too.
University of New Brunswick forever.
Yeah,
that was the whole thing. Is the gold standard of Canadian university hockey.
And
UNB.
one of the greatest mustaches in all of Canada.
A really good interview. I have interviewed Gardner McDougall. I did a piece for Flames Nation years and years ago because the Stockton Heat at the time, holy moly, dating myself, had multiple U Sports grads, including 2 from UNB on the team at the time. So I talked to him. Great guy. Really,
was Mark Rassel one of those guys?
No, it was Mark Simpson. And Chris Bennett were both former UNB Reds, and so he's great. If he were 10 years younger, he would probably be on short lists to be an NHL coach, and he still might be, but he's in his late 60s at this point, and he's just sort of had this long career already. He's come over into Moncton, finally into the QMJHL after, being the UNB Reds guy for, I think, a solid 15 years. But he sort of took over the St. John program that year. It was kind of a funny coincidence. Well, not a coincidence, but it was a circumstance where he took over after St. John was knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. They hired him just to coach the Memorial Cup.
Yeah, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the New Brunswick season ended, and then because the U Sports seasons ends over way early. Yeah. And the Moncton had St. John had basically just stepped on a rake in the opening round of the playoffs. Like it was like Saginaw
last year.
Oh yeah. They were a stacked team that played below their capabilities, and the St. John brass went, let's get this guy. He's pretty good.
Yeah, they just called in a ringer.
Yeah, it was just, and it worked because they won the championship. So that year was it Kuznetsov and Jeremy Poirier. Yeah, and this year the Flames fans will have 2 horses in the race, and this is gonna be a fun tournament because if you're, I was looking at the rosters today. There's a lot of NHL prospects on every single team. Outside of Rimouski, there are pretty good prospective players for this coming entry draft on every team, including Hunter Brustevich's little brother, Henry, including Moncton's pint-sized sniper Caleb Desnoyers, he's not big, but god damn could he score. Like he was the MVP in the Quebec League playoffs.
He'll be gone long before Calgary.
Bryce Pickford, formerly of the Seattle Thunderbirds and currently of the Mad Hat Tigers. They got him, I believe, before the trade deadline this year, and he set I believe a CHL record with like 8 goals in 8 games as a defenseman in the playoffs, which is unheard of. Jonas Wu, every team has some pretty good prospects, and Medicine Hat also has a player that a lot of folks are hoping that somehow lightning can strike and the Flames could. Well, someone's going to be very happy with Gavin McKenna. I don't think it's going to be the Flames. They'd be happy if they got him. I just don't think they're going to get him. But yeah, there's a lot of fun angles on this. If you want to cheer for Flames players, there's Flames players on 2 teams. If you want to boo Oilers or Leafs prospects, they're all over the place too. Like you could, if you're just a hockey fan that just wants to, have some beverages and enjoy some really good hockey starting on Friday, pretty much every night, there's going to be a reason to get really riled up one way or the other for either team.
So let's just handicap it a little bit, because I think a lot of folks expect the Knights to do quite well. And
they always do.
That is sort of based on historical precedent. Whenever the London Knights are in the Memorial Cup, there's a good chance they'll win. Of course, when the Flames drafted Matthew Tkachuk, they were just coming off of a dominant Memorial Cup victory where he was on that amazing line with Mitch Marner and Christian Dvorak. And The Knights right now are projected to be a very, very good and competitive team. You mentioned a couple of their players. You'll recognize a few of them if you watch Team Canada, the World Juniors, although you might want to be forgetting that one about now. But Sam Dickinson, Easton Cowan, and Oliver Bonk, all Team Canada alumni. Sam O'Reilly, Edmonton Oilers prospect. Denver Barkey, a very good Philadelphia Flyers prospect. Like you mentioned, Henry Brustevich. They're really stacked to the nines. Kasper Halttunen had 15 goals in 17 OHL playoff games. I mean, it is a very strong team. Rimouski, if you're looking at them for the same level of star power, you're not going to find it. It's not really a team that has the singular talents, but they do have a lot of depth. They've got, I think, 9 players with at least 30 points. Matthew Cataford played for Team Canada at the World Juniors. So they've got some good players. But of course, the ones who we are the most focused on here are Andrew Basha and Etienne Moran. And of course, with Andrew Basha, not a whole lot needs to be said other than he missed a lot of time and now he's back.
I think we can do better than that.
Well, that's my Cosentino. Oh, no, that's my couldn't resist. But Andrew Basha, we're looking at the player who missed time after December 29th, I believe. 28th. Did not play a single game from December 28th until May. Missed over 5 months of action. And when he comes back, I mean, he makes an immediate impact. He's scoring right away. He scored that beautiful goal that you just saw there, where he sort of deked the Spokane Chiefs out of their pants, put one upstairs to make it a 5-0 game. And ended up really being the turning point of that series. Medicine Hat and Spokane battled to a 1-1 draw off the first 2 games before Medicine Hat won 3 in a row decisively to win that series. Basha actually scored the very first goal of this series, which I think is also coming up here. Here it is. It was on his very first shift since coming back from 5 months off. So you can see he didn't really miss a beat.
And not only that, so folks, for those of you who are unaware, Basha was an early second rounder by the Flames. A lot of folks on draft weekend were going, how the hell did he fall to the second round? That's insane. Because he was a very capable player. And it turns out he was playing with a busted up ankle, an ankle injury of some manner that required surgery. He was injured, I believe, either November or December of last year, and essentially played with a less than 100% ankle for the better part of a calendar year before, coincidentally enough, he was supposed to play against the Hitmen on December 29th. And then I think by he still tweaked something on the 28th. They basically threw in the towel, said, okay, let's just get this dealt with so that it's not nagging you anymore. So he was a early second rounder, despite not playing in 100% for pretty much 2/3 of his draft year. Willie Desjardins told some media during the Western League final that, if Basha was at 100%, he probably would have gone top 15 in last year's draft. So this is a guy that we have not really seen him at full capability yet. And even at not full capability, he was one of the more impressive players at Flames prospect camp. He got preseason games in and didn't look out of place. And that was, again, him as a teenager who was not playing at 100%. So I think a lot of folks are really excited to see how he does. He was good, but not great in the Western League final. He was noticeable for positive reasons, but he's also a guy who hasn't played in 4.5 months. So still getting his timing back, still figuring it out. But if you're a Flames fan, especially a fan of hometown kids, I mean, he wears 34 because he loves Mika Kiprusoff, as many folks do. He's got local ties. His family, run a wonderful local establishment here. He's an easy kid to root for, and I think this could be one of the events. Like, he's a big game player, and this could be one of those situations where you look at him and go, okay, if the Tigers are going to get where they want to go, if 34 can sort of be noticeable more often than not, I like their chances.
Oh, another guy I would look at, and you mentioned him as well as Bryce Pickford, who's a really interesting re-entry as a right shot D, who just scored 13 goals in 18 playoff games for those Medicine Hat Tigers. But you sort of mentioned it, Pike. Basha, of course, being injured for a lot of the season. It's sort of the story of these Tigers where Caden Lindstrom misses the entire season and only comes back in the championship final.
And he didn't play every game either. The Blue Jackets and the Tigers are working on some load management for him. He hasn't played in 13 months.
Yeah.
And so not playing after 13 months, you're not going to throw him the deep end. So especially with the schedule in the Mem Cup, you don't play every day you play typically every second game. There's going to be a situation where they play on back-to-back nights, but I'm really fascinated how Lindstrom's used because, he and, he was on a line with Florida Panthers prospect Hunter St. Martin and Basha. They were ostensibly their second line or used their second line. They're really good. And if Lindstrom can be anywhere close to 100%, like St. Martin had a really good playoff, Basha had a really good playoff, and that line could be the difference to them. And we talked about London. London's got a dozen players who are NHL drafted players, but if you're the Tigers, I think you look at the 7 you have plus McKenna, plus Pickford, plus Wu. I think you look at the aggregate group you have and go, you like your chances, especially their forward group. I really like Medicine Hat's forward group.
Oh, but Tanner Molendyk on defense. I mean, what an ad that was. So it's. I think they've got a lot of dimensions there. They're going to be a tough out. And it's kind of curious to see this through line of the last few years. There have been these sort of local kids, WHL kids, maybe a little undersized, but they all seem to fall a little bit, and understandably with Basha, a bit of injury concern there. But you look at it, you go Stankoven, Andrew Cristall, Andrew Basha, and it just makes me wonder about some of these WHL kids who are coming up that Flames fans are super intrigued by. And we're not going to talk too much about the 25 draft, but I look at Ben Kindle and Cole Reshny, and these are two guys who I would love to see become Flames. And I'm super curious to see if this is the year that teams stop undervaluing these types of players. And jury's still out, of course, on Basha and Cristall. But I think at this point, as early as it may be, you can look at those players and say there are maybe teams that should have taken gambles on those guys. Stankoven, of course. And now you're looking at those two guys.
If we're going to talk small guys, you got to talk Cameron Schmidt. I mean,
yeah.
If we're going to be like, oh God, Kindle's 5'10" and a half, he's small. Cameron Schmidt's listed at 5'7", which means that it might be like a rounding error up to 5'7". So I think, I don't know, there's going to be a lot of guys this year that it's we'll get into it in future editions. This is a really good Western League class. Really good Western League class. Good OHL class too. The Calgary Flames, their two assistant head scouts are both from the Western League and the OHL. So this is they probably feel like they know this group really well. Their special advisor spent a lot of his time watching these guys and coaching some of these guys. So it's gonna be an interesting year for that. But yeah, I'm really fascinated as to sort of how some of these younger guys maybe take a step during this tournament, because it's been sort of mentioned here and there on social media, like most teams had their final draft meetings or their almost final draft meetings in the last few weeks. Usually teams sort of close the book, or mostly close the book on their draft list after the U18s, because not a lot. Typically you don't have a lot of draft eligible guys in super high end spots in the CHL playoffs, because it tends to be teams that are a little bit older that go further. But this year I think there's a lot of younger guys, a lot of young players in key spots on a lot of these teams, and I think that will they might be the ones that determine. Case in point, Caleb Desnoyers. As you mentioned, smaller dudes who can just put the puck in the net. I watched him at the Holinkas last year on video. Very good, but you go, ooh, can he do that against bigger guys? And in the playoffs, a lot less space, a lot more of a grind. They don't call the full rule book, even in the Western League or the Quebec League. Guys get sort of hacked and slashed across. And Desnoyers basically had to battle through a lot of stuff, but he still, by a country mile, I think, was the MVP in that playoff race. So if he can do what he does, how do you bet against Moncton?
It's going to be tough, and we're going to talk a little bit about Moncton, because you mentioned the Flames' proclivity towards picking OHLers and WHLers, and I think combined last year of their 10 picks, I think 7 of them came out of those two leagues, either 7 or 8. You think about it, they had Zarubin and they had Gridin and Hoskins, so yeah, 7. But you look at it, they didn't pick a single player out of the QMJHL last year. Gridin went to the QMJHL, but they didn't pick anybody out of the Q. But in 2023, they did, and they picked Etienne Moran, who was a defensive prospect who some guys were really, really high on going into that draft. Some of them viewing him as a first-round pick. I remember Dan Marr from Central Scouting had him as the number 1 defenseman available in that draft, which is a little bit too bold even for me, but still, something that is a huge compliment. And I think what we have heard and what we have seen of Etienne Moran this year is, by all indications, maybe, if not the strongest, one of the strongest defensemen in the QMJHL. And I think there's some people out there who do say quite affirmatively that he is the strongest in the QMJHL right now. And, the offense is one thing, and it is incredibly encouraging to see a guy who is of Moran's stature. He's not a small guy. He's 6'3", 6'4", nice and good build. And he scores quite a lot, around a point a game over the last 3 seasons in the Q. But also just a physically dominant player.
Yeah, I mean, in his draft year, when we spoke to during draft weekend, spoke to Craig Conroy and Todd Button along the wall, they were mentioning to us, Moran's a guy that you can see potentially running a power play. He's got really good edges. I think he's been compared kind of favorably to Jeremy Poirier, where Poirier, you could say arguably tries to do a bit too much on his own, whereas Moran has that awareness to sort of use his edges and use his positioning and use his skating to sort of draw defenders in to open up spots for himself. And he's not someone that has a lot of gaudy offensive numbers, but I think over the last couple of years he's really rounded out his game. And if something happens for Moncton, something positive, odds are number 5 is on the ice for them. And that's, if you're the Flames and you have so many of these right shot guys that have those really good offensive skills, and you go, can there be someone who has sort of a complementary skill set down the line that really fills in what they don't have? I mean, the Flames are really high on Axel Hurtig, who just finished his first year in the Western League. He was, for those of you who don't care about plus minus, you can just ignore this, but you only care about plus minus if it's real good or real bad. And Hurtig had one of the best plus minus in the entire Western League as a player figuring out how to play on the smaller ice.
Better than Yakimchuk's.
Oh, he was
way better.
He was Yakimchuk's a different player, but Hurtig just figured out how to play his game in those situations. Was really, really leaned on by Chris McFarland and the staff as a tough minutes guy, and he excelled in that role. And he could be someone that can play with your potentially Mews, Brustevich, Perek. But I think you also look at how well Etienne Moran plays and the things he does well and how he does them well. And, the game can go in a lot of different directions, and Moran can adapt to what the game is asking of him. So he's someone, I think, if you haven't seen a lot of Moncton, and let's be honest, if you're in Western Canada, it's not easy to see a lot of the Moncton Wildcats. It's easy to see. I think we have access to a lot of the Western League games in person or on video, but it's a little bit, you got to work hard and you got to go looking for the Q games. This next week, go out of your way to watch Moncton, because in addition to having some damn good draft prospects, Moran's a really fascinating player for what he can do and what he might be able to develop into.
I oversold his height a little bit off the top of my head. He's closer to 6'2", but nevertheless, I don't think there's any doubt that Etienne Moran is the best left defense prospect in the Flame system. There's not a whole lot of competition. It's pretty much Jeremy Poirier, and that's about it. Yan Kuznetsov is there, but Moran just has some of that upside that the other guys just frankly don't have. And he is the thing that stands out to me. Obviously, a lot of guys on that Moncton team had good years. They were a very good team. Moran was doing everything, and you were mentioning plus minus. He was a plus 38. I mean, that is unbelievable.
Again, we only bring up plus minus if it's real good or real bad.
Like, this is not a guy who was getting plum minutes. I mean, obviously, he was getting a lot of good deployments, but he wasn't just getting those deployments. He was getting everything. He was the workhorse for this Moncton team. He was their number 1 defenseman, and he performed admirably. He was pushing play in every direction, and I think, we're going to talk a little bit later on about the Wranglers rookie class next year, because it's shaping up to be a very robust rookie class. And if I'm going on a limb, the Flames have 2 guys from the Q who could make their AHL full-time debuts next season, and Matt Vagradin and Etienne Moran. And I'm almost more excited to watch Moran. I think he has the potential to be a top pairing AHL defenseman as soon as next season. And
we'll get into this later.
We're going to get into it, but
can you imagine Moran and Brustevich on a pairing?
Oh, I mean, and those are 2 guys who are perfectly suited for each other in so many ways. I mean, Moran reminds me, he's got a little bit of Giordano in him. I think he plays that same way, where he's maybe not he's not he's not enormous. Like he's not going to tower over you like Chara might. And he's a good scorer, but he's not an overwhelming scorer. But he is so poised and he is so smart, and he doesn't get beaten. And he's also really capable of demolishing you if you get in his way. Where I just see that stylistic comparison right there, and I'm really excited by that player. I think aside from Zane Parekh, I mean Brustevich, I have all the time in the world for, and I probably do have him ahead of Etienne Moran, but I don't think they're as far apart as some people might say.
We'll get into this in a bit, but I'm really excited about seeing how the Wranglers blue line group develops the next little bit, because they have a lot of projects, and they don't all need to pan out for them to have a really good defensive group going forward.
Well, that's pretty much it for the Memorial Cup. I mean, I think it's always a bit of a folly to make predictions about it. Although I do think Medicine Hat is a very good chance. I think I just think the depth throughout that lineup. I think adding Molendyke was, arguably the best trade in the dub this season. Just in terms of what he provides, and I think they're, if Lindstrom plays, they're going to be a really tough out. But we can only talk about Junior in that sense for so long, because there is also another facet of the whole CHL discussion to talk about. And that is a discussion that maybe the CHL doesn't want us to talk about as much, but we still have to, because it concerns the Flames in a very relevant way. And that is the players, Pike, who are leaving the CHL next season. And by our count, there are 4 of them who are Flames affiliated and who are going from either the dub, the OHL, or the Q to the NCAA next season. And we can talk about them in no particular order, but I think the one that is maybe one of the more recent ones that has sort of captured some people's attention is Luke Misa, because this is a player who was a 5th round pick of the Flames last season, had an excellent season with the Brampton Steelheads. Again, another sort of undersized player a little bit who, there were people, various outlets saying this was a player who was going to be a 2nd round pick, 3rd round pick. He ends up going all the way in the 5th. And there were, fans who were saying, wow, the Flames got that guy. They really, they took a swing on this guy. This is a guy who has star potential maybe. But he also has some, a few red flags. His brother, Michael, is not going to go in the 5th round. He might not make it to the 5th pick in this year's 2025 NHL draft. But Luke Misa is going to Penn State, a very good program, a program that has grown very significantly in the last couple of years. Part of that is because of a guy who we're going to talk about as a Wranglers rookie coming up. But now Misa is going to be at the focal point of a Nittany Lions program that made their longest ever tournament run this season.
Yeah, they were good, and I think they're a program that's really taken a step, and I think you got to point to the coaching staff. They've done a really nice job there, but credit where it's due. I mean, they had Aiden Fink. I think they still do have Aiden Fink, a Calgary kid who really stirred the drink for their offense, and they managed to get Arseny Sergeyev on the transfer portal. Sergeyev had spent 2 years at UConn, hadn't really grabbed hold of the number 1 role. You can make an argument to what degree he was given a chance to, and I'm willing to have that conversation. But Penn State basically felt like they had everything but goaltending, and they, the sales pitch to him was, come here, we'll give you a chance to be our number 1. And from when he came back in January to the end of the year, he was one of, if not the best goaltender in college hockey this year. And I think it's unfair to say he dragged Penn State to the Frozen Four, but he did everything he could to keep them in every single game, even the ones they lost, even that heartbreaker they lost to BU in the semifinal. He was excellent all year. And, as a result, Penn State is a place where people want to go now. They saw, I think if you're a young player, you see the commitment that the coaching staff had to giving guys chances to grab hold of roles. And I think if you're Luke Misa, you look at that and go, ooh, damn, I can really play a big role there for a year or two and then develop physically a bit. And then, Misa's an 05. So he signed with the Flames, he would have been eligible to go to the AHL. I would argue that as a guy who is generously listed as 5'10", and is a skinny side of 5'10", he probably could use some time to develop. And, as a 5th rounder, he's probably the type of player that you look at, between his physical development, between his hockey development, and go, okay, playing some fewer games in the NCAA, but getting some more time at the gym and with the nutritionist, and basically learning, how to develop yourself physically a bit. That's not a bad spot for him. So, he went from being, in the olden days before the NCAA agreement, Luke Misa is a guy that either would have been, let's be blunt, playing on the coast next year because the Wranglers and the Flames have a lot of bodies under contract already, or he would be going back to Brampton to a situation where I don't think there's anything left for him to achieve there. And instead, he's going to an entirely new situation where he's going to learn, where he's going to be challenged. He won't necessarily be thrown, in over his skis like he might have been in the AHL. But, if you're looking for sort of an intermediate step for him and not sending him to the coast, I like this move for him. And, I'd say, we'll get into this later, but I really like the similar situation with Eric Jamieson, another 05, going to Denver rather than going to the coast or being an extra body for the Wranglers. He's going to go to a very good program and have the opportunity to play a big role right away. And, I think if you're these guys, again, Jamieson could have gone back as an overager in the Western League. Would that have done much for him? I don't know. But he'll be challenged this year.
Well, and that's the thing. So Misa and Jamieson, maybe good to lump them together because they're both 05s. Misa was a first-year eligible last year. Jamieson was a second year. He was a re-entry, but he was sort of he was an 05 birthday, so he sort of had a little bit more juice. He was a later birthday for the previous draft year. So, they end up being two of those guys. And with Misa, I mean, the obvious analog is Rory Cairns because he was a 6th-round pick who I would argue suffered in terms of his position in the organization because he went to the ECHL. Not to say that it wasn't valuable in a way, but I would posit that if Rory Cairns had the opportunity to go from the OHL, from the Greyhounds to the NCAA, I think he would have been regarded as maybe more of a prospect by the time that he turned 22, 23 versus sort of having to bounce back and forth. And I think it is a really beneficial thing for Luke Misa. Worth pointing out with Penn State, you mentioned Aiden Fink, former Brooks Bandit. They're getting Nathan Free, another Brooks Bandit, who is, I think, going to be, he's not drafted, but I think he's going to be, nearly as good, a very good Brooks Bandit. Aiden Fink never should have fallen to the 7th round when he did, but Nashville scooped him up. They got a good one. Arseny Sergayev, who you mentioned, the goalie for Penn State last year, of course, no longer there. He signs with the Flames a couple months ago, or I guess last month. Kevin Riedler is going to be the replacement. He is an Ottawa Senators prospect, so they still will have an NHL drafted goalie. So,
and we got 2 more Flames kids who are going to be heading to college for the first time next year.
That's
Which one do you want to do first?
Well, we'll touch upon Jamieson just quickly here because you mentioned he's landed DuPont's partner with the Everett Silvertips for a lot of the last couple of years. So going to be interesting to see him playing at a Denver school that has always been good with developing its players. It has a lot of resources
and a very good coach in David Carl.
A very good coach in David Carl, who was a prime candidate for the Chicago job. Did not ultimately pursue it, even though I think if he'd wanted it, he probably would have it. So that's how highly regarded that coaching staff is. We'll move on for another guy because I sort of briefly touched upon Misa and Jamieson, both 05s. Henry Mews, who we will discuss, is an 06. But there's another aspect of the NCAA pathway that is new for players that extends the lifespan of players, prospects, pathways in the Flames system or any team system. In years past, we have seen the Flames draft guys out of the CHL, and they only have 2 years to really prove what they can do. And sometimes after those 2 years, the Flames say, we haven't seen quite enough. We wish you well, but it's not going to happen here. And the first one that comes to my mind is guys like Milos Roman. Remember Milos Roman, the old Vancouver Giants center?
I believe he's currently playing at the World Championships.
There you go. And that's the thing, right? Is these guys, they perfectly fine juniors, probably good pros, but just and as Flames prospects, just not quite room, not quite the opportunity. But that's what's happening with Jaden Lipinski now, another Vancouver Giants center. Who is, under the previous system would be about 3 weeks away from being
10 days.
There you go. Even less. Look at how much I know. 10 days away from losing his Flames prospect status entirely. He would no longer be a Flames prospect, but now, because of the NCAA agreement, he is heading to college and he will remain a Flames prospect for the coming years. Pike.
Yeah, he's going to go to Maine. Lipinski, really interesting player, Arizona kid, big, 6'4", 190 something pounds. Good prospect, but he's one of those guys where sometimes players plateau in terms of development in the role they're given in a certain league. He was not a dominant overager this year. He was consistently good, occasionally great, but you typically, if you're going to be an overager who's screaming, "You need to sign me tomorrow," you need to be well over a point per game. And we've seen some guys in those situations, but Lipinski, they gave him a chance to try himself out as a fourth line center with the Wranglers earlier this season. He was okay, but I think he probably needed to be better than okay in that role for them to really commit to having him do that for the full season. So he went back to the Western League. And the cool thing now is, instead of, being someone that sort of plateaus and then, goes
done.
Because, there's plenty of guys where, you're 20, you don't get signed, and then you sort of just hang around as an AHL contracted guy in someone's system, or you go to the coast, or maybe go to Europe or whatever.
Go to Canadian University.
Yeah, you go to U Sports. Now, he's going to Maine, and it gives him a chance to sort of, he's not going to be the big man on campus, so to speak. He's still going to be physically big, but he's playing against grown men, a lot of guys older than him in a tough college conference. And it'll be a chance for him to progress potentially. And, for him, he's a guy that he has all the tools. You look at it on paper and you go, fourth rounder, 6'4", just shy of 200 pounds. He's got all the tools, but it's just a matter of, I think the nice thing for the Flames development staff is you did get the long look at him at Wranglers camp at first couple of AHL games. You had a long look at him the last couple of years, so you can sort of see where his progression is and where you want him to improve. And especially like if there were things that you saw or you didn't see in October with the Wranglers that made you go, no, not quite ready. You kind of know what things you want him to zero in on now. And I think that's kind of the exciting thing for him and for the system, because you have a bit more runway in guys. You don't need to decide at 20 if Jett Luchanko can be a useful player in your system. You get until 21 or 22, and can 2 years make a difference? Sure, plenty of difference. There's plenty of guys that are kind of unremarkable pros at 20 or 21 that sort of figure it out at 22 or 23.
Well, I think in my opinion, the two player archetypes that are going to benefit the most from this new agreement are the smaller guys who can score a lot in junior but need to prove they can take the next step, and the bigger guys who haven't really figured it out yet. And I think those two archetypes, you go to college, you find out what you can be against better competition with. Maybe, some guys are better suited to that competition than they are against juniors. It really is just that kind of way. And so I'm really excited to see what Lipinski can do, because, it kind of sucks having to lose these guys after just 2 years. And if it were Lipinski, under the previous circumstances, you're right, Pike, he would probably not have this level of opportunity. He would be going to, I don't know, he'd be playing for the Rapid City Rush. He'd be playing for the Golden Bears. He'd be, I don't know. This is him being able to continue on an upward path, I think, instead of sort of going sideways. And that's,
and like you mentioned with the archetype, like not everyone's development's the same. Not development's not always a straight line for everyone, but like imagine being in a situation like this is the only career path I can think of where you're washed at 20 if you don't figure it out. And that's, most anyone who's listening to this or watching this, most of us were, incomplete in many ways at 20 or 21 or 22. And so you just giving these guys a little bit more runway to figure it out, I think is beneficial both for the players and for the teams, because, if you're the Flames, you don't need to freak out about Lipinski being or not being what you wanted to be at 20. You have a bit more runway. And, as we'll mention another guy in a second, it'll give you opportunities to have challenges and have developmental opportunities that you didn't have before. And instead of sort of, having to throw someone, again, we mentioned Misa, we mentioned Jamieson, we mentioned Lipinski, throwing somebody into a situation where they might not be well suited for yet and going, It's the only option we have for him. We got to throw him into the shark infested waters. And if he gets eaten alive, well, it's still the best option we had. Now they got more options. Now they got arguably better options. You don't need to throw him to the Sharks or the Wolves necessarily. You get him a little bit more options for what you can do with them.
Quickly, Pike, just, laid out for folks, because there's been some confusion, and I think there's some confusion among us, but with everything being so new, Lipinski going to college, the Flames still hold on to his rights. How long do they still have his rights?
All right. So if you're drafted from the CHL, the team that drafts you has your rights until June 1st, 2 years after you're drafted. So for example, we'll just use Luke Misa as example. The Flames drafted him in 2023. They would have had his rights until they drafted in 2024. They would have had his rights until June 1st, 2026. Lipinski was coming up on June 1st, 2025, when his rights would have lapsed. But since he committed to college before June 1st, he gets an extra, his is extended. And so for college players, here's how it works. Your drafting team, in this case, the Flames, has your rights until the later of 4 years after you're drafted. Instead of June 1st plus 2, it's June 1st plus 4, or the August 15th after you decide to leave school. So if Lipinski does 2 years in college and goes, okay, I'm coming out, then, the clock would be a little bit different, but that's the high end of it. And there's a misconception that they have to change the CBA. This is already in the CBA. This is stuff. If you want us to show to pull an obscure name, Mitchell Matson was a Flames prospect who was drafted many years ago. He did 2 years in junior in the USHL and then went to college. So the Flames kept his rights the whole time because he did 2 years, and committed during those 2 years to college, and then moved along. So
he was at college forever. Like he stayed at Michigan State.
People just love Michigan State. They want to stay Spartans forever. And Mitchell Matson did his level best. I'm pretty sure he graduated, got a degree in something.
Yeah. I think Mitch Matson was a Flames prospect for 7 years. I want to say. I think he
at
was
least six.
I think he might have stayed for his senior year. Or his redshirt year. I don't know. But in any event, so that's Jaden Lipinski, 2004. So he would have been done in junior, but he's going on into the NCAA with Maine. And then the last one, and the one who we've probably talked the most about throughout the year, because there was a lot of talk about it. It was a pretty open secret that Henry Mews.
Oh no, this caught everyone by surprise. Everyone was very shocked that this happened.
Henry Mews going to Michigan, one of the top programs in the entire country, and probably, if not the top, he's not the top OHL recruit to college, because there's a guy named Michael Misa who is maybe going to go down there, and Porter Martone maybe, and we'll see. But among the guys who have already been drafted, Henry Mews certainly one of the more higher profile guys who is not going to sign an ELC right away. He's going to college. He's going to Michigan. After a year in which he started out incredibly strong with the Ottawa 67s, got traded to a Sudbury Wolves team that kind of did a face plant down the stretch, and he was, doing his best to stay afloat on that Sudbury team that summarily died in round one of the playoffs. They just did not do anything.
Some teams just don't click, man.
They just I mean, they gave up a ton of picks to get Henry Mews, and they didn't really do a whole lot with him, which was too bad. But we're excited to see what Mews can do at Michigan.
I mean, we talk about, I know if you've listened to any of the various burner shows, if you've listened to us on the website at various points, you've seen us and heard us wax poetic about the greatness of Zane Parekh, and very well deserved. Zane Parekh is, potentially probably in the last 20 years, the best Flames defensive prospect they've had
since Dion.
Dion, for sure. Like he's up there. And so the level of accolades that Parekh has gotten are completely well deserved. If Parekh did not exist, we would be just bending everyone's ears about Henry Mews. Henry Mews, 82 points this year, 61 the year before. He's progressed a ton. He's very good offensively. He's working on the rest of it. And I think Michigan's a great time for him to go work on the rest of it. He's an 06. And, we mentioned, Eric Jamieson. What would Eric Jamieson stand to gain from an overage year in the Western League after playing the level he has and on the teams he has? You could argue probably very little. He'd be spinning his wheels, and you don't want to spend a key developmental year spinning your wheels. Henry Mews, outside of winning championships, has basically accomplished everything you can in the Ontario League. And so if you're him, much like the options could be available to Zane Parekh. Yeah, you could maybe sign with the Flames. You could be, maybe you can push for an NHL job. But right now, let's be blunt, I don't know if you necessarily want to throw Henry Mews into the NHL. AHL is not an option because he's only 19. He's not eligible to play by age. And so, okay, do you just send him back to the O to spin his wheels for a year? Or do you get him in a situation at Michigan where he's playing in a very good conference with a very good team and will have an opportunity to play a different role that he's used to? And so, yeah, I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot because I just think the way it's working right now on paper for a lot of these guys, you can kind of understand why they want to do it. And you kind of understand why the organization would be like, sweet, go do it. Henry, go to college, kill it for a year or two. Maybe in a year, when you're in a year, you're 20. Maybe you come out and come play for the Wranglers next year. Depends who graduates from the Wranglers next year, right?
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, there are folks who are going to say, oh, Henry Mews is this great young defenseman. Why isn't he signing? Is he going to pull an Adam Fox? Is he, what's going to happen here? I mean, I wouldn't be as concerned about it, partially because the clock hasn't even started with Henry Mews' college career yet, and we're already a year ahead of where Fox was. You're looking at Henry Mews already played a year junior. He would have to basically wait until 5 years after he is drafted for the Flames to not be able to sign him anymore, for him to be able to sign with whoever he wants. I don't necessarily know that Henry Mews, as great as he is, he's a very good prospect, but I don't know if we're looking at a player who's going to be able to command the interest of teams to say, well, we want you to be an NHL player right away, and we're going to, wait for you to come out of college to do that, to put you in the lineup right away. I think Mews is a very good prospect, but I think this is a guy who in a couple of years we're going to see sign and spend a year or two maybe with the Wranglers after that, and sort of a similar mold to what we're seeing with Brustevich right now.
Yeah, and if you sign your entry level contract at 18, it can slide twice, and then a 3-year clock starts when you're 20. If you sign when you're 20, your 3-year clock starts when you're 20. Sign when you're 21, 3-year clock starts when you're 21. So if you're Mews, your pro career is potentially not going to be delayed at all by going to college for a year or two.
Yep.
And you know a bit more about yourself, both as a person and as a athlete. And, a lot of these places, I mean, you see some of these schools. I mean, North Dakota, for example, let's name drop North Dakota. North Dakota has a complex for their hockey team that rivals a lot of NHL clubs.
Mm-hmm.
And so does Michigan, so do a lot of these schools. And so if you have the option of sort of, you can go to Winsport, you can ride the bus, you can go to Rapid City, you can spend, your rest of your time in Sudbury. All due respect to Sudbury. No one's saying a bad thing about Sudbury. We love you, Sudbury. But would you rather go to Michigan and you're playing in a little bit more of a pro style environment, playing against men, playing with, you have a shorter schedule, you have more time in the gym, you have guys in your locker room who are a year or two ahead of you. So instead of you being, the oldest guy in the locker room and being leaned on, you get to lean on other guys and learn a bit. So, there's a lot to be gleaned from this. And, in a year or two, we could be talking, we've talked about this a lot. There's gonna be some guys that just, let's be blunt. College ain't for everybody. Like between the academics, between the lifestyle, between just the difference between, how hockey is played in the NCAA versus any of the CHL leagues, some guys just will hate it. Like some guys just aren't gonna be a good fit for this. But if you're this first wave, what downside is there to trying it? You're gonna figure it out. And to be honest, you're also helping the guys coming after you, where, the kid who's 16 playing for Everett right now is going to be able to learn from Eric Jamieson, call Eric Jamieson and be like, hey, what do you think of college? Was it right for you? Would it be right for me? And, there's going to be a lot of ripple effects from this, and hopefully positive ones. And I think the next couple of years are going to be chaos for the developmental systems of pretty much every NHL club and the CHL and the NCAA. It's going to be a lot of mess, but, I'm an optimist by nature. I'm hoping that a lot of these guys can sort of take what they learn from this and help each other and help their schools and help their club teams, because, more options and more good spots for players to learn and play and grow is better for everybody.
Go to college, get into fights with the dean, that lousy dean.
Steal the mascot from the other team.
Pull on the pig's tail. Curly straight.
Excuse me. That sounds like a pig fainting.
That bra bomb better work, nerdlinger. All right. Yeah, I mean, hey, you talk about NHL facilities and college schools. I hear that one down at ASU is just remarkable. That's
I thought we agreed not to talk about ASU unless we're talking about specific college players.
That's an NHL facility right there.
This is not the Cullen Potter hour. We're doing that next time.
Hey, another guy who might be a Flames target. We'll talk about that later. But so we've talked about some guys who are going to college. Now we got to talk about some guys who are going to the Wranglers, because and we're not going to spend time talking about all these guys because it is a long list. This is probably the most, I would say, robust Wranglers rookie class we've seen. I would say. I think, looking up and down, all the guys who are graduating from the CHL, coming out of college, it's really impressive. And Pike, I mean, just give us some of the names.
I got my list. Hold on.
Pike's got the spreadsheet. There was some discussion in the chat about who would win in a trivia contest, you or me.
Okay,
it'd be Pike. It would
unquestionably entering the entry-level system this coming year. In goal, Owen Say from Notre Dame and Arseny Sergayev from Penn State. On the blue line, it's kind of quiet. Only Etienne Moran, unless they sign some other guys. But Etienne Moran is probably he's going to be the big one. Again, him and Brzezinski could be kind of good together.
No kidding.
And up front, we got 4 players who could potentially be getting their first, well, technically, they'll be the first twirls under NHL contracts. Andrew Basha, Matt Fagredin, Carter King, and Adar Suniev. And that means you basically have 2 goaltenders, an entire forward line, and an extra winger, and a defenseman, all of which could be playing pretty significant roles with the minor league club next year, and all of which I think, I'd say I don't think we're in any danger of seeing Owen Say or Sergayev in the NHL immediately because of the quality and types of people ahead of them. But I mean, Basha looked real good in camp. We've already seen Suniev in the NHL. Carter King, he was really good in a handful of games in the AHL at the end of the season. So it's not a bad group. They got there's a lot of different things going on in that age group.
Put it this way, I think there is a realistic possibility that there could be an entire when the Wranglers go on a power play next year. I think there is a chance that every Wrangler on the ice could be a rookie. At a certain point.
That'd be a good power play.
Wouldn't that be crazy?
I think the problem is you don't have any right shots there, but I mean,
who needs it?
I mean, that's not bad. You can
Gridin, Basha, Suniev, those are 3 great shots. King can take the face-offs, put Moran on the point. It's perfect. That's, I mean, why not, right? And have Sergayev in net. I mean, I think there's a better than let's start in net, because I think there's a better than 0 chance that Sergayev ends up stealing the starter's job. I think you look at his track record. Obviously, it's a little spotty in the NCAA. He wasn't, the guy at UConn. And he wasn't competing against an NHL affiliate, a prospect at UConn, but then he goes to Penn State and he's incredible. And we saw what he did against UConn in the NCAA playoffs, which was unbelievably impressive.
That must have been a nice game for him.
Long game that caps off with multiple overtimes. He gets the win. I mean, incredible.
Against the team that let him leave.
And then, you're looking at him, and obviously no shade to Devin Cooley, but we don't know what the Flames goaltending situation is going to look like next year. We think they'll probably keep Dan Vladar.
It's going to be Dustin Wolf and somebody.
Yeah, and so, how does that shake out? And I think there's a very good chance Sergayev gets a long look as the Wranglers' #1 guy, and so we'll see. I think the stats kind of speak themselves, and he's not maybe the biggest guy, but his numbers are just very impressive.
He played 30 something games last year. I don't think they're going to lean on him that hard, but I think if I'm reading the tea leaves, I would suspect Cooley is the one, and then Owen Say and Sergayev sort of rotate in and out of Rapid City.
Maybe to start,
and they'll see how things go. But I mean, I think you give guys opportunities and see how they go. For the Wranglers, I mean, they see winning and playing important games down the stretch as really important to player development. And, they're as excited as the Flames development staff is about seeing 2 of their players play deep into May and into very early June. I think they'd love to see, much the Abbotsford Canucks right now are playing some damn good hockey, and those players are getting those reps. And I think the Flames look at what Abbotsford's doing and go, okay, that better be us next year. We want to be like that next year. And so, if whichever goaltender gives them the chance to win down the stretch, they're going to go on. And so, we've seen a lot of different guys get different opportunities. So I wouldn't rule it out. I don't think that they're going to throw Owen Say or Sergayev in right away. I think they're going to give them a chance to sort of ease in. But much like we saw this year with Dustin Wolf, the NHL, you develop a game plan for the first part of the season and then go, okay, we're going to see what happens in October, November. And based on what happens in October, November, we'll go, okay, here's the new plan. So especially in the AHL, like the AHL, you're going to lose your best players at a moment's notice. So you have to, if you're an AHL manager or AHL coaching staff, you better have a plan A through F, even further down the alphabet, because you're gonna lose a lot of your best players when you least can stand to lose your best players.
Well, and the other thing with Owen Say, I think we should mention is, this is a guy who's kind of a fun story because he wasn't really a BCHL starter until he was basically 20. I mean, this is a guy who's had a very long route to get to this point, playing in various minor leagues and even then the BCHL. It's not the Dub. It's the BC League. It's a good league, but it's not the Dub. And that was pre independence. So, a little bit of a different makeup. Goes to college, plays at Mercyhurst, which is not exactly a top program.
AHA?
Yeah. Goes to Notre Dame, which again, not a terrific program, but a good program, a solid program, a program that's been around for a long time.
It's Big Ten. It's a good conference.
Yeah, Jake Boltman's old team, right there. Not bad.
Trevor Janicki's old team.
Yeah, there you go. And he puts up a 10-15-0 record, which is not great, but it was a team that went 12-25.
A 920 save percentage in a good conference.
Save percentage is pretty darn good. So 6'2", not small by any means. He's a decent sized goalie, not tall, but not small. He might not be a bad player to have in the system. Maybe as a Connor Murphy replacement, but maybe more. So it's something that they needed to address. They didn't have a whole lot of goaltenders under contract. And really it was just how many goalies do they have under contract before they signed Sergayev and Wolf, or pardon me, Sergayev and Say? For next year, Wolf and Cooley. That's it.
Yeah.
So they needed to add organizational depth, and they've done that. And I think the Wranglers goaltending tandem, whether it is Sergayev or Cooley or Say getting the lion's share of the games, it'll be pretty good. We talked about how on defense, they're only really making one major addition. They did bring in some guys late last season to sort of shore things up. We're not sure if we might see them return for a full-time slew of games next year. But of course, we've already talked at length about Etienne Moran, and you've talked about wanting to put him with Hunter Prustevich. But the defensemen that they have next year, it's going to be really interesting because they have a lot of guys who they've seen a lot of on defense. They've seen a lot of Jeremy Poirier. They've seen a lot of Yan Kuznetsov. They've seen a full season of Artem Grushnikov now. Where are all these guys going to fit in? How is it going to work?
Well, I'm glad I don't have to figure that out because, I think Trent Cull and his staff are going to have, I think it's going to be really, we talked about how competitive camps are. I mean, we'll see what happens to the NHL level. I know a lot of folks are going, oh man, be so sweet to see Zane Parekh in the NHL. And yeah, seeing Zane Parekh in the NHL will be very exciting. But I think if you're a development honk like us, you're looking at the ripple effects of that. So if Zane Parex's in the NHL, who's not? And where are they going to go? Because I think there's a non-zero chance that players who are making decent money, NHL money on one ways, could be playing with the Wranglers next year. Because I think the Flames probably have a handful of guys that go, okay, that guy has a clear role, everyday guy. We'll see, I think if they're assuming they're all still here, Weegar, Anderson, Pahal probably have very well-defined roles. But beyond that, I mean, Kevin Ball, okay, yeah, that's 4 guys for 7 spots.
And that's if Rasmus stays.
So depending on what happens in the offseason, I mean, is Jake Bean a everyday NHLer?
No.
I think he found a nice rhythm with Braden Pahal down the stretch, but it took a long time for him to really find that. And I think when he spoke to us on exit day, Bean was very negative about his season and thinks he needs to do a lot better. And I don't think he's wrong because Ilya Solovyov, what's left for him to do in the American League?
Yeah, geez, I totally forgot him.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
Like he could be someone who, you put him with Pahal, third pairing and penalty kill him.
Probably just as good.
Yeah. What happens with Danil Miramanov? Yeah. What happens with, Hunter Prustevich had quietly a very good season last year.
As outstanding in his first game.
His numbers were nothing to write home about, but he was also learning a completely new style of hockey. And I don't think we can say enough about how much Yan Kuznetsov did for Hunter Brustevich last year.
Well, and also 32 points as a rookie defenseman in the AHL. To me, that is a number.
And he played the first month as a 19-year-old.
Yeah, like that's to me, that is extremely impressive. And that's like you look back at Rasmus Anderson's first AHL season. That clears Rasmus' first AHL season. It really does. And so I think it's quite impressive.
And then there's a question of, where does Jeremy Poirier fit in? In his fourth year in the AHL.
He made his AHL debut the first year of the Wranglers, and this is going to be the fourth year.
So it'd be year 4.
Yeah, because he's coming off his ELC.
Yeah, so there's going to be a lot of questions I think the forward group, NHL and AHL, reasonably well defined. Maybe there'll be some tweaks here and there, but I think for the most part we kind of have an idea what they're going to be like. But the defensive group at both levels, I think, has a lot of question marks, and not negative question marks, more like, I wonder what this guy can do. And especially the dominoes are, from Brustevich making a push could be fairly significant, because if Zane Parekh lays claim to a top 4 NHL spot, or even just a NHL spot, an everyday spot, that means that somebody who was previously penciled in is going to be unpenciled and falling down somewhere.
Well, and that's if they don't, like, the way that I see it, I think Rasmus is more likely than not on his way out. But even if they do trade Rasmus, there's nothing to say that they don't get a defenseman back in that deal. And if they don't do that, I think there's a good chance they sign a defenseman, particularly on the left side, because they frankly need it. If it's not Joel Hanley, they're going to get somebody. And I think there's a very good chance that they run it with another veteran next year. So you're looking at Parekh being in. It's just going to be a huge logjam down there. And I think, there was somebody in the chat talking about Moran as a trade candidate. I don't think so. But I think one of those right shot guys that they have, I could see it. And
they can't keep everybody.
I know, that's the thing.
They have so many, shout out to our friends at Post Media. Danny Austin just put together a piece on all the damn left shot forwards the Flames have in their system. There are so many of them, and they have so many left shot forwards that, Pospisil had to play on his off wing. Coleman played his off wing. Matvei Gridin is a lefty who plays on the right side, possibly, I think, just because he's more comfortable there. But probably everywhere he's been, there's been so many lefties. Parker Bell's a left shot forward who's played the whole year on the right side in the Wranglers because there's so many lefties.
It's extremely common with Russian players. It's extremely common. If you look up and down the list of the Russian wingers in the NHL, the vast majority of them do play on their offsides. I think it's a very good possibility that Gridin ends up being a right wing in the NHL. I think it's.
But there's so many lefties. There's so many lefties. Where are they all going to go?
Goals count the same if they get shot in with a left or a right hand. I mean, I don't know. I think if that's where he feels comfortable, and I think that's all the evidence that points toward that. I think we need to pencil him in as a right wing. But we're going to talk about the forwards, because the Wranglers already have a decent crop, I would say, of forwards. Not the group we have seen in years past. I mean, we've seen some extremely potent first lines with the Wranglers and with the Stockton Heat. You think back to the days of Connor Zary and Jacob Pelche, and Matthew Phillips and Glenn Godden and Luke Philp. And I think we're
let's talk about players who played the NHL.
We're veering more toward the Godden and Philp line, I would say, with the guys who are, some of the guys who are around with the Wranglers right now.
Yeah, I don't think they have Matt Coronado on their roster right now.
I should say all those guys did play in the NHL, though. Every single one that I listed. Godden played with Anaheim. Philp played with Chicago. Phillips played with Washington and Calgary. So
I'm pretty sure I watched a lot of Glenn Godden with the Ontario Reign this year.
Oh no, I know. But he played with the Anaheim Ducks. I know that. So beat that trivia. Okay, we're gonna keep going. William Stromgren.
You're downgrading goal per game Sam Morton here, and I won't stand for it.
William Stromgren, Sam Morton. There's a number of guys who are the incumbents, but we're talking about the guys who are coming in, and I think there is a very good chance that we're looking at least one of Andrew Basha and Matvei Gridin as a top line winger for the Wranglers next season. And you look at Carter King, probably more of a depth center, at least to start things off. But if Sam Morton's arrival last year is of any indication, there's a lot of leeway for guys who can play respectable hockey in their own end.
All I know is I only count 3 centers on the Calgary Flames roster right now. And until that changes, I don't know who's going to be on the Wranglers roster of the middle, because, Sam Honzik played probably a dozen games last year as a center. He was fine. Is that going to be what he is going forward? I don't know. A decision on that might have to be coming fairly soon so you can slot him properly. But, you got Morton, you got King, maybe Clark Bishop's back. There's a lot of different things they could do. And it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, well, Justin Kirkland, of course, a strong candidate to be re-signed. We don't expect Kevin Rooney to be back, but stranger things have happened. It happened last year, so can't rule it out. But yeah, you make a strong point. If Sam Morton is the guy who they look at and say, we want this guy to at least compete for our 4C job, or maybe just sort of have that in pencil going into training camp, well, then Carter King's future becomes a little bit more defined, I would say, maybe in a more of a top 6 role or a middle 6 role for certain. It is going to be, I say, they might not have the top heavy firepower, but I think we will see a Wranglers team this coming year that has a little bit more similarity between their top 3 forward lines than maybe we've seen in the past, where there's been a huge drop off. How many goals? What percentage of goals did Rory Cairns contribute to for the Wranglers last year? It was a high percentage. It was a pretty top heavy productivity sort of cohort for the Wranglers last year. And of course, maybe Cairns is a guy who plays a little bit more in the NHL this year. But I think what we can safely say right now with the Wranglers on defense is that at forward, is there is nobody who is maybe looked at as being a lock to take that next step out of camp coming forward into next season. But there are a lot of guys who will be jostling for that opportunity to make that jump.
Are we counting Klapka? Or are we saying Klapka graduated?
I think Klapka's made it. I mean, I don't know. It reminds me of Walker Dewar, but I like Klapka a lot more than I liked Walker Dewar. I think Klapka stands out in a lot more positive ways versus just being on a...
Klapka's going to play in the World's quarterfinals on Thursday. So, I mean...
To me, what I saw from Adam Klapka last year was not indicative of a shooting percentage spike. It was indicative of a player who found his legs and really became an impactful player even when he wasn't scoring. I thought he was by far and away the best player on that 4th line for a lot of that stretch drive. So I don't know if I would consider him a Wranglers guy at this point, but sure.
Huska was really complimentary during exits about Klapka. I think either game 81 or during exits, he sort of mentioned that, that last stretch, it's after the last, I think 13 or 15 games, something like that, after they put Klapka on the 4th line with Rooney and Blomberg, things just sort of clicked. And that 4th line, like we saw that game against, was it Colorado, where, the 4th line just barreled their way into stealing them a game because they got good enough goaltending, and then the 4th line just woke up. And, if Klapka can be the AHL version of himself, like that kind of confidence, that, that assuredness of, oh, I can just do my thing and, go to the net and, wreak havoc. And like we saw that one beautiful goal he scored in the World Championships. If that Klapka can show up like 40 to 45 games a year, wow, that's pretty good. I think they'll be pretty happy with that.
Well, I wrote a little bit about it earlier this week at Flames Nation. And, you look at the history of players in this league who are that tall. Because there have been a few of them. He's not the only one, but there haven't been many.
Keegan Kanzik.
Well, I said in this league. But if you're looking at the history of guys in the NHL, primarily guys that size are defensemen who don't necessarily need to make as intricate a move with the puck on a regular basis as a forward needs to. And if you're looking at guys who are 6'8", it's sort of guys like Mitch Fritz and Derek Bugard and John Scott. And, it's guys who were known for fighting. And Elmer Soderblom is sort of the only one who's sort of in that similar vein. But then you got to kind of go down to 6'6" guys like Marty Hansel and Eric Daze. And it's guys who are that tall. They just don't score. They don't produce. They don't contribute offensively on a regular basis. It is so unusual. I mean, I even remember seeing the Flames have had some tall guys. They've had guys like, I don't know, remember Chris Breen?
The Breen Giant. Very good AHL player.
But like even guys like Kevin Westgarth, and I don't even know. They've had tall guys. Nobody has ever stood out as much to me immediately as soon as he steps on the ice as Adam Klapka does. He is just, it's like he's an alien. He's like plucked out of another galaxy.
He was obviously not drafted. He was a free agent, but the Flames have never drafted in their history a player listed as 6'8". They've drafted 3, 6, 7 guys.
Kanzig,
Goaltender,
Hunter Smith.
Center Matthew Schneider in 2004, Keegan Kanzig in 2013, and obscure trivia answer, Stepan Volkovsky.
Oh, Stepan Volkovsky. I remember the uproar when the Flames did not sign Stepan Volkovsky to his ELC after his 2016-17 season with the ECHL's Adirondack Thunder, in which he scored 20 goals as a defenseman. Then he proceeded to sign an ELC with the LA Kings, played 3 years
after
with the Ontario Reign.
After a year, which means they didn't even offer him a contract.
Yeah, they didn't even offer him a contract. Talk about trivia. There's trivia time. Stepan Volkovsky, ELC with the Ontario or the LA Kings, never played a game for him. So the Flames have never drafted a guy even 6'7" who's played a game for them. Because none of those guys did. Hunter Smith, he must have been listed at 6'6", never played a game for them.
He was 6'6".
Remember Hunter Smith?
Yeah.
There's a guy who looked like he was from another galaxy, Hunter Smith, but he not in a good way.
Yeah, this is inconsistent. Elite Prospects lists Stepan Volkovsky as 6'9", 249.
No way.
Maybe he skates on. Stepan Volkovsky is ELC. He played 44 games with the Ontario Reign, then spent the most of the next
Manchester
year
Monarchs.
between Manchester and the Allen Americans, and then spent the rest of his career. He's basically played 49 games over his entry-level contract in the A and spent the rest of the time on the coast.
There was a lot.
Now he's at Akbar's Kazan.
There was a lot of ink spilled about that 2016 draft when they really only got, I mean, I'm not talking about their second-round pick, but 2 guys out of it worth a damn. And the rest of him, and remember everybody talking about A2 Tulola?
A lot of stuff can go wrong with player development.
We're talking about A2 Tulola after he scored a hat trick at development camp. He was on a line with Matthew Tkachuk. He was not a bad.
He was decent in the AHL.
They still have his rights.
You know, he's playing pretty well in Liga. So I mean,
that's
there's a lot of things that can derail player development.
We have officially reached the remember when portion of the show. And
I remember when you said we do 40 minutes and we're still going.
I know we're still going. We're 30 minutes over. We're gonna wrap it up quick, but I want to do one more just little brief topic before we log off, because we're going to talk a little bit about the fourth line a little bit. We talked about Adam Klapka and how good he has been. Ryan Lomberg, obviously, played almost every game for the Flames this year. There's been some talk about maybe
he played every game that his wife was not actively having a baby during.
That's right. What would you think about a guy? And if it is a guy coming up from the Wranglers, who would you like it to be? But maybe easing some of the load on Ryan Lomberg this year. And what would you think about maybe how would William Stromgren look on a line with Adam Klapka at some point? Because they played together in the American League a little bit.
Does
that make sense?
If you're going to bring up someone to be a Lomberg disciple, it's going to be Lucas Siona.
Oh no, Lucas Siona. Not William Stromgren. You think Siona's that close?
I think Siona's got a bit of snarl to him that I don't think a lot of other guys in that. I don't think Stromgren's best use is playing fourth line minutes. I think, he needs to have a lot of puck touches to be effective, at least from what I've seen. Siona is just a pit bull. Siona came up through the Seattle Thunderbirds. He went from being a raw 16-year-old to being the captain of a championship team. He's a guy that when you draft him in the 6th round, you go, maybe he can turn into Ryan Lomberg. And I think he's well on his way. He was quietly one of the better stories on the Wranglers team last year, just in terms of, plenty of guys. We've seen this in the AHL too, but a lot of times you're starting. I think we see this a lot in jobs. So folks, anyone who started a new job, your first however long is figuring out, okay, can I fit in here? Like, can I just do this job? Do I belong in this position, in this company, in this role? And then after you figured out the answer is yes to that, then you get some confidence and be able to sort of figure out how you want to do the job and what kind of identity you want to bring to it. And it takes the guys a while. There's been a lot of NHL players who are just bodies in the league and don't quite have a identity to the league. Some guys figured it out right away. We saw Matthew Tkachuk figured out how to be Matthew Tkachuk almost instantaneously.
Yeah, no kidding.
Siona took him a little bit of time in the last year. He was sort of a spare body for a lot of the second half of the year with the Wranglers, but he had a good summer, and he was consistently noticeable for positive reasons on the ice with the Wranglers. If he wasn't scoring, if he wasn't throwing hits, he was doing things in the corners of the ice that made other teams take really stupid retaliatory penalties. Like will he score 20 goals in the NHL? I don't
Maybe.
know. I don't know.
Sean
I won't.
Donovan did.
I won't rule it out. But yeah, like the 04 Flames worked because they had enough guys that had an identity of their game and knew what they needed to do to be effective. Stefan Yell, Ville Nieminen, Marcus Nilsson, Sean Donovan.
Chris
Like you had those bottom six guys, the complementary pieces that brought an identity. And Ryan Lomberg, I think, is a very good player for his role because Ryan Lomberg knows exactly how to be Ryan Lomberg. And he does not try to go out on the ice to be anything but Ryan Lomberg. He does not try to do anything that Ryan Lomberg would not be good at. Whereas, Siona, I think this year figured out what Lucas Siona can be at the AHL. And I think he's going to try to top that next year. But if you're looking for someone that, maybe you want to bring up someone from time to time to sort of, ease the burden on Lomberg, I think Siona might be a decent spot for that.
Lucas Siona discussion was not planned for this episode, but I should have known it was coming because Pike loves and you know what? He's a very good AHL bottom six player, and I think
Western League champion.
I think he could be an NHL player with the right seasoning, with the right circumstances. I'd like to see what William Strong can do, but we'll see. I think you would too, but I think we'll get a taste of both of them at some point here in the next 12 months or so. In the NHL. Pike, we have a little bit of a surprise, a bit of a treat. Our friend Robert Munich. Is it Munich or Munich?
Munich. Hence the Bobby Germany.
Of course. Well,
yeah. How are you getting that wrong?
There's two N's. It's MUNN. I mean, I don't know if it was Munich, I would explain. But anyway, he's here in studio. Robert Munich is here in studio. Bobby Germany himself. We saw some of his highlights, his clips throughout the show. We have to shout out Blasty Prospects on Twitter. A few of those clips as well. But Bobby himself, a lot of those, and he's got. What he describes in our chat as some surprise trivia for the two of us to cap off today's show. And I would imagine we're doing sort of Family Feud rules where we have to like buzz in or answer as quickly as possible. So Robert's on mic. Pike, you ready?
I think sure. Let's do this.
Okay, here we go. Robert, take it away.
You two guys are Calgary Flames encyclopedias.
Okay.
So I thought this was going to be perfect to finish off the episode tonight. So we're doing a little trivia. And the theme is first goals with the Calgary Flames. So,
okay.
And here's the rules. So I'm going to give Pike 5 players. I'm going to give Gould 5 players.
All right.
You guys have to tell me who this player scored their first goal with the Flames against. So you'll get 1 point if you get that right. And you'll get an extra point if you can describe the goal.
Okay. All right. I get it.
And we're talking about teams they scored, not goals, right?
Okay. Teams they scored.
I could probably do goalies if it was the right player, but go for it.
You guys probably could.
Okay.
So we're going to start with Pike.
Oh man.
Okay, so we're gonna do some easier players, and then we're gonna get a little more difficult as it goes. So first player for Pike, Sean Monahan.
Columbus.
Correct. Can you describe the goal?
I believe it was him banging the puck in along the blue paint.
That is correct. 2 points for Pike. Big start. We now go to Gould.
Mm-hmm.
Matthew Tkachuk.
Ooh, his was against the Buffalo Sabres.
Correct.
I believe he broke in from like the left wall, sort of sniped it. It might have been like Jonas Enroth in net or something. But he, I remember the celly. He just sort of went down and he lit it up. I think from the left wall, or either it was from one of the walls.
Yep.
Yeah.
Bang on.
Yeah.
All right, we're tied up 2-2. Back to Pike. Elias Lindholm.
Ooh, I think I know this one, Pike.
I want to say Vancouver.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah. They were wearing the retro jerseys. I think Derek Ryan might have scored that night too.
I think this one was sort of a nice shot from the hash marks.
Yeah.
Not quite.
No?
It was a tip.
Really?
Tip early in the first
period. Oh, he
scored
2 that night. He scored 2 that night. That's right, because he got the 1 feed over to the right side.
It is very funny that these guys scored against teams they ended up playing for.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, I remember that I watched that game in Toronto. I was at my sister's place visiting. I was at school in Ottawa, and I went to Toronto, and I watched that game on our couch.
Very nice.
So I should get a bonus point for that.
Why?
Okay.
1 point for Pike. All right, back to Gould. Michael Backlund.
Oh Jesus! This is going too far back for me.
Not scoring his first game.
No, I know that. Yeah, he wasn't wearing number 60. Man, it wasn't that one that against the Canucks where he went. No,
it was not. It was actually the Coyotes.
I
thought you were going to get that one.
I should have guessed that.
All right, Pike takes the lead. 3 more players each. Jonathan Huberdeau, Pike. Who did Jonathan Huberdeau score his first goal against?
Oh man,
I want to say like the Kings or someone.
Incorrect.
Oh.
The Penguins.
Oh, on that road trip, wasn't it?
Oh,
At home, seeing eye shot.
oh, yeah. Okay.
0 points for Pike on that
Okay.
one.
All right. We're back to back 0 points. I can get the next one.
Gould,
Yeah.
Mackenzie Weegar.
Oh, well, you see, here's the thing, Robert. Here's the thing. You're giving me players from this iteration of the Flames, the team that is notoriously easy to not care about. So I enjoy watching these players, but I don't care about the individual games nearly as much. I'm going to say like the Oilers.
Incorrect. Vancouver Canucks.
See, like that's the thing. So many. Okay. Anyway, go.
Back-to-back zeros for Mike Gould.
Yeah, that's embarrassing.
All right, we're going back to Pike. Blake Coleman.
Oh, damn. I want to say Edmonton.
Close. Anaheim.
Remember when our buddy,
Geographically close. Same division.
Same
remember,
division.
Same division.
I remember our buddy Taranjot, who does work with the Flames now. He broke that signing. That was he was the first one on Twitter to have that one. That was fun.
Part of the legendary Shot Down in Flames podcast.
Remember that?
And
Remember
Flames
that?
Nation.
Remember that?
All right. Okay. We only got 2 more for Gold
Okay.
here.
Okay.
Andrew Mangiapane.
Oh, Avs. No. No. I take that back. I take it back. No, it wasn't the Avs. It was a Canucks.
Correct.
Yeah. It was a one-timer from the right circle.
Correct.
Yeah.
Very well done.
Yeah, no, it was the Avs in the playoffs, of course, but
Avs in
no.
the playoffs.
That was
And
a hell of a goal in the playoffs.
yeah,
Too.
remember that one? Yeah.
Remember that fourth line?
Yeah.
What a great fourth line that was.
Yeah. Ryan Hathaway, oh man, they should have kept that line together. Ugh.
Okay, so we're heading into the final round. We got 3 for Pike, 4 for Gould.
Okay. Wow,
Okay.
I'm ahead.
And the last one, these are obscure.
Okay.
And this is where I think you guys are going to really thrive. Pike, who did James Neal score his first goal against?
I was at this game. I know exactly. Or no, I wasn't. It was on
Nashville?
St. Louis.
St. Louis.
Yeah. It was a little tapping in front. If it was his first home goal, it was against Pittsburgh. And I know because I was there, and it was that one that he like tried to cross-check into the net, and it fluttered in from the
I
point.
believe that was the 9-1 game against Pittsburgh.
The thing-
on home ice.
The thing with the guys who are more obscure is there's fewer goals to choose from, so I remember all of them individually. And Neil's his last goal with the Flames was against the Kings in a game where like they won 7-1, and he was wearing an alternate captain's.
Ugh.
Oh, yeah, because that was when everybody was injured.
Yeah, he was an alternate captain for a game,
Gross.
and he scored.
Thank you very much for not saying assistant captain.
Yeah. So anyway,
All right. Well, Gold wins.
okay, but
But
give me
here's the
those.
last one.
Yeah.
Chris Tanev.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I wish you had given me Neil.
And this one's interesting.
Was this the pandemic
It
year?
was. So
This
I'm
is
gonna
the pandemic year.
Was it
know-
Vancouver?
No, I was gonna say the
It's
Ottawa
always
Senators.
Vancouver.
I was gonna-
Incorrect.
It was not Ottawa.
Winnipeg Jets
Okay.
from center ice.
Oh, sure.
If you guys remember that.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I acquitted myself pretty well. I'm pretty happy with
Very
that.
well done. All right. Gold wins.
Thank you.
4-3.
Honestly, that's the only category where I might win that one.
And the chat had a lot of Pikes. There
Of
were a lot of
course.
people on Pike's side, but Gould
Well-
just absolutely dunked on them.
Well, no, it was close. It was 4-3. It was 4-3. And you know what? There are so many instances. You picked relatively recent players. I think if you had gone for maybe Curtis Glencross or Andre Zuzan. Did Andre Zuzan score a goal with the Flames? He probably did.
Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, Adam Party scored a goal with
Adam-
the Flames.
I remember. Yeah, I remember. I think he scored one on opening night once, wearing number 7. Remember that?
Remember when Christoph Olawa scored the goal of Stanley Cup final?
I don't. I was 3 years old.
I remember that game-winning goal Monitor scored the
Mhm.
final that year.
Yeah,
That was
well,
fun.
against the Sharks.
a lot of my
Yeah.
a lot of my memories of that run are kind of hazy.
If we don't stop this show now, we're going to do this for another hour. So until we head out, thank you to Robert Munich. Thank you to Jack, our guy on the headset, who handed it off to Robert for a time to let that happen. That was fun. Thanks, Jack. And thank you to Ryan Pike. But a big thank you to Platinum Mitsubishi, who we're going to talk about again at the end of the show. Look at me. I'm doing my thing instead of waiting until the midway mark of the show and then doing another plug 5 minutes later. Platinum Mitsubishi, the home of the 2025 Outlander. And boy, is it a great car. And you might have heard a couple of months ago, the government got rid of the federal EV rebate of $5,000 off of the price of any electric vehicle. It was a real sad time. It happened over the weekend. We were all very sad about it. And we're not sure how long this is going to last, but it's on for at least the end of the month. Platinum Mitsubishi is honoring that $5,000 rebate for any cash or standard bank finance purchase of a 2025 Outlander PHEV, Canada's best-selling plug-in hybrid vehicle. 7 seats standard, and it is a fantastic car. And now, until at least the end of the month, $5,000 off like it would have been a couple of months ago under previous governmental regulations. So head on up 2720 Barlow Trail Northeast and check out the Outlander PHEV, the Outlander, the RVR, the Eclipse Cross, and even the Mirage, the little 5-seat hatchback, the last in its class, still in the, well, not production anymore. It's been discontinued, but they still got a few of them. Head on up. Platinum Mitsubishi, proud sponsors of the Back Burner Show. Pike, any last words?
No.
Okay. We will take you out back after that. Those were your last words. Thank you. My name is Mike Gould. For all of you, thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the Back Burner. We're going to try to make this semi-regular occurrence throughout the summer, very much up until the draft at the very least, and then we'll probably tie it into our prospect rankings at Flames Nation in some way, which should be a lot of fun because Pike, we know there's a lot of good prospects in this Flames system. There will be even more good prospects in the Flames system after June 27th and 28th. The NHL entry draft 2025 taking place in Los Angeles. The decentralized draft, the first and hopefully only time that ever takes place. Until then, and until next time, thank you so much for watching. Platinum Mitsubishi sponsors the Back Burner.